Go ahead. I'm going to hide.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
It's really lovely to see everyone. Thank you for coming, and it's really lovely to be here. So the subject today is non-duality, and there's Daron and myself, and we're just here to talk to people about non-duality. There's no claims to any expertise here or anything special, or that anyone knows anything or anyone's got anything. It's an open discussion on non-duality. And my friend Carol Thomas is here to co-host and help us with the technical side. There's Carol. And that's because I'm completely rubbish at technical things. So Carol will let you know. If you want to speak, you just raise your hand and Carol will ask you to unmute, and then you can just share or comment or ask questions. If you want to write in the chat below, you can write questions in there. And for viewers on YouTube, if you just write your questions in YouTube, we'll try and pick them up from there. So non-duality, I'm sure everyone already knows non-duality means not two. And the normal belief and the way people live in the world is in the belief that there is a person, a separate self, an individual, me, that lives in the body and that operates from that center in the world with others in a subject-object reality. And from that place, there then appears to be seeking, and the person believes that they have to seek in order to gain things to make their life fulfilled, successful, that they have to gain things to find their peace and happiness, and they have to strive for that and put effort into achieving those things. And what's suggested by non-duality is that that is not the case. That in fact, there is no center, there is no personal self, there's no identification with a self, but that is a structure that's just been formed from the moment the human being is born. There is just a belief structure and ideas and constructs that form what appears to be a solid object of a me self, of a person operating from that center. And actually, what this is not something that's moving and going forward. It's not something that one can use free willing to get things, that there is no one that can achieve anything. There's no one that can go anywhere. There's no one that can do anything. There simply is no one. And although there's an appearance, and that is just this, there is only this. There is only an appearance. And that appearance is completely neutral. That appearance is completely and utterly empty. There is nothing going on. Although the appearance appears to be happening, the appearance is completely full. There is nothing excluded in that. That appearance has everything. It's sometimes referred to as an unconditional love. Unconditional in that nothing is not allowed. There's no right and wrong, no should, no shouldn't. There is just simply this, whatever is happening right now, always this. There's no next, there's no future, there's no past. It's here, it's this. There's nothing to be got. There is only this rest. There's only a resting. There's only an emptiness and nothing with appearance of everything happen. And that appearance can include everything. It can include feelings. It can include thoughts. It includes sensations, but they are not belonging to anyone. That false structure of a personal self, a separate self, who believes that I am real and I live in a separate object world, is merely a fabrication, is merely a false construct. It can be likened to a dream or an illusion. And when this is seen through, it can be like, in a sense, waking up from a dream, a nighttime dream, where the dream feels very real and it feels like it's happening to you. And there can be sweating in the dream and anxiety in the dream, and anything can happen in the dream. But then you wake up in the morning and it's like, oh, it's just this. I'm just lying in bed. I'm just at peace. There's no effort in this. There's no going anywhere. It's completely empty. It's completely nothing. It's completely and totally effortless. And that is the natural state. That's what's always here. When that fog of the separation disappears, when that fog, that illusion, that dream, let's say evaporates, I don't know what word to use, but when that dissolves, it's seen this has always been as it is. It's always been just this, very, very simple. It's unbelievably simple. It's too simple for the mind. The mind can't get this or grasp this. So that's just a short introduction. And I'm just going to pass over to Daron, and he's just going to say a few words for his introduction. And then we're just going to open up, and hopefully loads of people will ask questions. You can't get anything wrong. Please feel free to play and chat here. It's completely safe to do that. Thank you.
Nice, Anne. Nice introduction. This is it. So, I mean, much like Anne said, we're here to talk about this, or what is already. And by that, I mean exactly this. What is disappearance? This is what's being looked for. But the seeking energy can't hear that. It feels, I remember it feeling like it can't just be this. It must be something else. There might be a thought that something's missing or something's wrong, or there might be a feeling that this needs to be somehow different to be okay, to be complete. But what's really longed for, I think, is the end of seeking. It's not necessary, it's not finding something. It's for the relaxation or the rest or the peace, or ironically, for what is already, just to be what is already. So I guess this message is saying that, I mean, like Anne was saying, there's no individual separate entity inside the body that is apart from everything else. It's saying there's no everything else and nothing to be apart. So I guess we're all going to talk about no thing appearing to happen, or emptiness, or empty fullness. And it's really hard to talk about, because trying to use words to describe something that isn't a thing, that doesn't exist, all gets a bit sort of Alice in Wonderland. And the mind or thought loves rabbit holes. So we might go down some of those. But emptiness is the closest description, I feel. And that emptiness feels neutral. And yet somehow in its neutrality, it feels like unconditional love. And when it's intuited, it's obvious. But when it's not, it somehow sounds absurd or paradoxical. So that's about it. So let's have a chat. Okay.
Great, thank you, Daron.
Yeah.
And are there any questions, Carol? Or comments or shares?
Not yet, no.
If anybody wants to ask anything, or anybody wants to say anything at all about non-duality, if you just go into the section on your computer or iPhone where it says raise hand, or if there's a gap, you can just speak. But if you just put your hand up, and Carol will ask you to unmute yourself. And if you don't want to speak out loud, then if you could just leave questions in the chat box on here or on YouTube. It's always good to have some interplay, because this is always a response to something. So it's nice if we can have interaction. But just following on from what Daron said, what we're trying to put into words that is impossible to put into words, because there's no language that could describe it. Words can't go there, because all words are dual. All word, all speaking, all language is duality. It's simply labels and concepts, and it's not the actual thisness. It's a description of something. It's a description of a tree. It's saying it's a tree or a couch or a table. It's a label for something. It's not actually what it is, but we've come to believe that that's what it is, that it's a solid object, but it's not solid. Nothing is solid. Everything is formless. Nothing has any substance. Nothing has any context. And you'll hear the word empty a lot, because I'm obsessed with that word, and I'm sure Daron is, so please forgive us if we constantly use that word, because we both love it. It's not empty in a negative way. It's not nothing in a negative way. When it's got no meaning and purpose, that is not negative. And it sounds very dull. It can sound like death, actually. But it's very alive. It's that's the relief. That's the relief, that it's like deep sleep. It's like deep meditation. It's just completely always at rest anyway. That is the natural. That is the naturalness of it. Without anything added, without the overlay, without the piling things on top of belief systems and concepts and imaginings and ideas and all of that piled on top. Sorry, did you want to say something, Daron?
No, I was just along, just doing that. Yeah, it just feels, that emptiness, it feels so empty. And that emptiness is almost palpable, but it's not, because it's just not a thing. It's not real. It doesn't exist. And yet somehow it feels obviously there, but it's not there. It's definitely not there. And everything, I think when it seemed to be noticed, or first noticed, it felt like half of everything was missing, and then something was noticed that sort of balanced everything out. Of course it didn't, but it was just incredible. A bit of a wow, sort of intake of breath. And a sort of, why wasn't that noticed? And it's because, well, of course it wasn't noticed, because it's nothing. You just wouldn't notice it. Which I think is why it's always tempting to keep talking about that emptiness or the nothing, because everything was already noticed. If that makes any sense. Everything is really obvious. And this feels like it's like going down a rabbit hole, I guess, talking about it, because you can't talk about it. It's what is already. It's just what's happening, what's appearing to happen. Has anybody got any questions? Hi, Tim's here. Hi, Tim. Rob. Hi, Rob and Walter and Art. Denise. Hi.
Tim's just said, just there, and just there, definitely not there, with a smile.
But that's the thing, it's always a paradox, It's always it's always both. It's always real and unreal. Or Tim just said it's there and not there. It's it's everything and nothing. It's not one or the other. It's not, you know, I think that's the thing that I didn't expect, that it would be real and unreal. I mean, how is that even possible?
Yeah,
you know,
and like Tim was just saying, completely there and completely not there. Yeah. Sorry to jump in, Anne. I thought we were on a phone call.
no, it's fine. It's great. Anyone jump in. It's good.
Tim's just wishing you good luck, but not that you need it.
Oh, thanks.
With that face.
Yeah.
Well, we can't compete with Tim, can we? He just flows. We haven't got that Ricky Gervais humour.
Yeah, he's a gem.
Yeah. So you know what's striking about this? It's really, really strange, because really nothing changes. That's what's the shock. There's not a great change in perception or anything. Everything's exactly the same. But the difference is the part that's undescribable. It's the same, but not the same. So it is exactly the same, but it's not the same. And what's seems to be recognised is that it's always been emptied. And when I say that, I mean, there's no experiencer here. There's no one in here. In language, experience can happen. Touch happens. Sensations happen in the body. Thoughts can go crazy. But they're not happening for anyone. There's always nothing happening. No matter what's happening, there's always nothing happening.
Yeah.
I think.
Sorry, go ahead, Carol.
Just a couple of comments on YouTube I was going to read out, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Benjamin says, great to see you guys team up.
Oh,
thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
And Jean H says, hi, Darren and Anne, thanks for doing this. I can see, with inverted commas, that all there is this, with inverted commas, and that no object is permanent, all arises and disappears at once, but emptiness, inverted commas, eludes me. How is it noticed? Do you want me to read that again?
No, I got that. I mean, how is it noticed? It's not actually noticed. Somehow it's obvious. It's not noticed in the way that you would notice a thing, because it's just not a thing, and yet it's really obvious. So I guess it's noticed in its obviousness. But that's not something that can be found or sort of spotted. Somehow, I'm just trying to think how that was noticed, and it's not of that, but it just, I don't know, just seemed to appear, which is a bit strange. Just seemed to be noticed somehow.
I think, sorry, Darren.
Go on, go ahead.
I think the seeking energy, and that's what the separate self is really, that illusion of being a person, a me, a separate self, is the seeking. It's that constant loop of movement to go forward, to get this, to get something, to feel better, to get out of whatever's happening, or to get somewhere better all the time. A sense of lack, a sense of that there's just something missing, there's just something off. I mean, I remember that well. You know, from the minute that, you know, that there was consciousness, there's something missing. From the minute I knew, you know, there's always off. No matter even having a brilliant time, it's just off. It's just not it. It's something's missing. So strong. that was for me. And so this emptiness, I think it seems it's always empty, but the seeking can seem to obstruct it, can seem to make it cloudy almost. It's very obvious when that seeking's seen through. There's just a stop. There's just a, and it's not even a big thing. It's just like, oh, this, you know, it's, oh God, it's just this, you know. And that's, I think, because it's always been so full of seeking, you know, so moving and seeking, that when that seeking stops, it's just so clear that everything is just completely empty. And I don't even know if this is describing it well, because I really, you know, it's so impossible. You know, I wish I could just put it into some words that haven't been already used. You know, I rack my brain to try and find words that are not used all the time, that not to just say the same old emptiness, nothing and everything, empty fullness. But they're just the best pointers, really.
Yeah.
And so they just come out, you know, there's...
Yeah, and if you don't use those words, you can start going down a bit of a rabbit hole trying to reach for other words to explain it that don't seem to, not explain it, but describe it, that don't seem to describe it as well as something like emptiness. I noticed that Walter just popped up, a little question popped up in chat, and he said, I don't think you can notice this, but you don't notice this, there isn't a you, there never was a you, so it's...
I think he continues that on. Daron was saying it is noticed in your absence. It's already everything, including the seeking itself.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
true. And yet in your absence, you still remain. So everything that you seem to take to be you still just sort of carries on. But it just doesn't feel like it's sort of running the show or in charge or up front or conducting or somehow. It's not quite the same.
We've got two more comments on YouTube. ISBK, waiting for end of seeking is seeking too, he says. I'm saying
Yes, it is definitely,
Yeah.
And nothing can stop that. You know, there's nothing wrong with seeking. It's not wrong. It's just what's happening. It can't be helped, you know. It's almost like as if the seeking sees itself eventually, sees that movement of, oh yeah, seeking constantly. But, you know, nothing's wrong. Nothing that appears is wrong. No matter what the mind says, no matter what thought says about everything, that commentary all the time, mind doesn't know this. Mind can only label and conceptualize and intellectualize, but mind doesn't know. It can't go there, it can't grasp it. And the seeking energy is a grasping, like a grasping machine. It always wants to get something because it only knows something. It only knows things as real. It doesn't know, it can't go to unreal.
We've got Jean again, who says, how did seeking end for you?
Well, seeking, it might seem, you might have heard this a lot and it's probably annoying, but seeking doesn't end for anyone because there's no one for it to end for. It's just an energetic movement, or it just stops by itself if it stops. Or sometimes it can seem And you know, and we can only talk in stories. We've only got language to describe and conceptualize things. So what I'm seeing, if I talk about past or future, are just ideas, just imaginings. But it can seem sometimes to slow down. I know how it seemed here was that things seem to slow down and things seem to become easier. Things seem to become lighter. As I was listening to this message, you know, it seemed to, you know, the message wasn't talking to me. It was talking to something else, like nothing, speaking to nothing. And it was kind of going over my head, you know. It doesn't have to be understood. It doesn't have to be known, because it can't be known. It can't. This is complete unknowing. That's the beauty of it. That's the rest, actually. It's that. It's just so lovely not to know anything. That sounds crazy, doesn't it? You know, but we seek to know things. Knowledge is power. It's so wrong. I mean, I don't mean wrong. I mean, it's so untrue, and there's nothing that's true. But it's so obvious that the only way anything can be known is through labels and concepts and ideas and imaginings. And that's kind of all made up. You know, it's all kind of man-made in a sense. It's just mind-made fabrications almost, whatever that means. But it's completely okay to be in not knowing. It's completely okay not to know what advice to give or how to help people or what's going to come next, what's got to be done. You know, there's so much reliance on the mind by the separate self, when actually that's not needed, because everything happens by itself. No one's doing it. It's totally effortless. Even when it feels like there's effort, it's totally effortless. And that becomes very obvious.
Yeah, I mean, completely. I mean, you just said it all, really, Anne. But just, I mean, add nothing really is. Yeah, it's just. It seems that when the questions or the questioning runs out and stops, and when there isn't a problem with what is already, just being what is already, there's the relaxation, I guess. Yeah.
I've got some more questions on YouTube if you're ready,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah, that's great.
And the next one is from Kamal, who says, could you please talk about emotions in the body and how they arise? Why in certain moments you find yourself completely invested?
Well, I guess earlier I was feeling a little nervous because I hadn't done a meeting quite like this before. I'd hosted and helped out, but that was about it. So, you know, nervousness, you would think would be quite a personal feeling, to feel nervous or sort of somehow conscious of that. But actually, it's just a feeling. There's some anxiety in the body, and you know, the person makes up this story of personal. They make up a story about the feelings and thoughts belonging to someone or something. So what's really surprising is that it doesn't need a personal for life to seem personal. That's just what's happening. So yeah. What do you think about that, Anne?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite obvious that there's going to be sensations and feelings in the body, but there's nothing to claim them. There's no Velcro anymore that things stick to. So it's just like a sort of empty tube. Things just sort of, they're just coming, appearing and disappearing and flowing. And it doesn't mean to say you don't feel anything. And you know, and you know, you're just like a zombie or something. It's completely alive. It's completely feeling, thinking, but it's not happening for anyone. That's the difference. You know, like now, there's a sensation going on here, and I'll label it my fingers touching each other. But even for you, now, it's just a sensation in nothing. It's just that it's claimed as my sensation, my fingers touching. They're my fingers touching. They're my tears, they're my thoughts. That's my worry, that's my anxiety. That's happening because I'm doing a talk. That's happening because I'm scared. And all those thoughts can still go on exactly the same, but there's no one to claim them. It doesn't matter. There's always a sort of effortless not mattering, even when it matters. And that's the most difficult thing to describe, that all these things can go on. No one would even know, you know, you're not walking around with a blissed out big smile and everything's, you know, that it's the most, it's just that rest is sort of amplified in everything. And there's stillness in the movement. There's quiet in the noise. There's always just this. There's nowhere to get. There's nothing here that's different from there. And there is no here and there.
And literally no movement. Yeah, I was making some lunch earlier, about 3 hours ago, and I was thinking about the meeting, thinking how that will be this, and here we are, in the same place. I haven't moved from the oven where I was cooking my dinner. It's it just doesn't move. It's completely still. There's a really nice, this is just completely aside from non-duality, but there's this really nice thing that I heard Sam Harris talking about. It was an exercise, a bit like the Douglas Harding exercises, you know, where you imagine the open face thing. And there's this lovely exercise where you can look in the mirror. I don't know if you've ever looked in the mirror and noticed that you can't see your eyes moving. Your eyes never move. So if you move your eyes around, you just can't see them move. And when you look back at the image, they're always completely still. And that sense of not movement is a little bit, actually it's not like that at all, but it's kind of like that. Yeah, but there's this feeling of, I don't know whether you have this, Anne, but when you look in the mirror, there's just nothing looking back. There's a reflection is seen, and it's recognized that it's your body, but here, but what's looking seems to be really empty and really still. But that exercise seemed to give a little flavor of it, I thought. If, you know, yeah.
Yeah, nothing going on.
Yeah.
Nothing,
yeah, just completely still. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what strikes all the time. It's just striking all the time. It's like, today I was out running around the hospital. I'd take a friend in to get her pot removed. I was quite conscious of timing and whether she'd be ready in time to get back for this. But what was striking all the time, that all that appearance was happening. Everything was moving, and you know, there was a lot to consider, and there was anxiety in the body about tonight, but yet nothing was going on. With all that happening, nothing is going on. And it's not happening to anyone. It's just happening. That's the play in it. It's playful. It's playful in that. It's not, there's nothing to be avoided. You know, it's just what's happening. So that You can't run away from anything, because it's going to happen anyway, regardless of what you do, you think, you say, you feel. It's always just happening. It's always right here, right now. And that's exactly the way it's meant to be. But the seeking energy always wants something else, you see. That's the nature of it. So it's never quite here, in a sense. It's always in that movement. You know, it's never still. It's always wanting. And it can be very, very subtle sometimes. It's not always, you know, when you want a new house or a car. It's always there because it feels a sense of lack. It feels like something's missing. But there's, you know, there's always that rest in everything. I mean, that seeking energy, the me, the separate self, it just wouldn't want this. It wants something. It doesn't want nothing. It doesn't want no thing. It wants something. You know, in the Anne story, Anne wanted a lot of things. Whoa, I mean, striving and efforting to have material possessions, a bigger house, a bigger car, a better business. And even when all that's given up, oh no, it's not that anymore. That's not doing it. You know, that's just going round on a wheel doing the same things. So then it's in spirituality, the circuit searching. I want to awaken, I want enlightenment, I want this, I want God, I want that, whatever path. And each path led me to the same place, led me to this, the same thing. It always felt the same. It always felt futile. It was always momentary satisfaction, momentary fulfillment, momentary in loveness. And it was the stopping of all that when that stops, then that's where the rest comes in. And rest sounds boring, but it's a rest that's an unbelievable rest.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't not want this. It doesn't know why it doesn't want this, but it is just this. And it wants something else. It wants something, it has this idea that there is some awakening or some enlightenment or something that it can get where it will feel complete and peaceful. And yet it's just this. And in that not recognition, but in that sort of end of seeking is the relaxation. And somehow that relaxation, in that relaxation, it seems to be recognized that it's empty. The emptiness seems to be, it's almost like the seeking covers up that emptiness somehow.
And this is not something new that you don't know. It's not something new that you can experience. It's not an experience. It's not a new experience that you're going to have or that anyone has. It's something that's already known. It's already, you know, when the infant is born, when a child is born, he doesn't know it's a baby. It doesn't know, it doesn't think it's a thing. It's completely boundless energy. It's completely one with everything. It doesn't see itself as separate from its mother or its surroundings. It just sees light and colour and there's a memory of that. There can be a memory of that.
Mm.
Or a sense of that.
And it's constantly rejected. You're not actually constantly rejecting it, but it is being constantly rejected in the sense that it's just this. And in the looking for something else, there's the constant rejection of it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Are you ready for another question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just before I give that question, I BK and Jean are saying thank you to both of you. So the next question comes from Sarah, who says, when people are on psychedelics, the experience is very, very real, but it's all just happening in the brain.
I don't know much about the brain, but a psychedelic experience would be what's happening. It would be just this. A seemingly different this, because it would be changed. The reality of it, or the seeming visual aspects of it, are going to be very different. Colors are going to be different. Sounds are going to be different. And it's probably going to give you an idea that there could be different sort of ways of seeing this. You know, maybe some animals see this in a different way to us. Our eyes, I don't know much about eyes, but we see different frequencies of light. So that's our experience. And a psychedelic experience is just another sort of change of this sort of experience, but it's still just this. And even in that psychedelic experience would be that stillness, that unmoving ness.
Yeah, and it's psychedelic.
And just to add, I mean, I don't know. You may get some insights as to that stillness, but to me, it not necessarily. I mean, this is so obvious that you really don't need to take psychedelics to see it, and it's not seen because it's not a thing. So it's not like it's there, but the obviousness of it, you don't need psychedelics. Yeah.
And psychedelics, I mean, I've never taken them actually, although I have taken a few things. I'm not going to mention them here. But it's just what's happening. You know, it's just another experience like anything else, you know, like being completely drunk slightly alters your reality. There's no difference really. It's just what's happening, but it is an experience. It has a beginning and an end, you know, and this doesn't have a beginning or an end. There's no start and finish to this. There's no birth and death in this. Birth and death is for the body mind.
Yeah, you can't find a beginning and an end to this. Can't find a start. Where does it start? Start now? No. Does it end? Is it always starting and always ending? Both at the same time?
And you said, and it seems really real when they're on psychedelics, but nothing is real. Nothing is real. It's all the appearance. Whether it feels real or unreal, it's all appearance. It's all nothing. There is nothing solid. It appears solid. It seems solid, but it's not real.
Yeah.
It's real and unreal, which kind of cancel each other out, really. So it just dissolves into nothing. That's why then you'd blip to the emptiness word, because even emptiness is better than nothing, because everything is happening, but nothing is happening. And probably just repeating ourselves now, because does anybody want to speak out loud, or
Oh yeah.
does anybody want to unmute themselves? I think there's a hand up there, Carol. I don't know, has it been up for a while?
I can't see.
Nikki,
yes, we have.
Nikki and Michael. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who wants to go?
Hands,
who had their hand up first? Nikki and Michael, you're going to have to fight it out.
Yeah. Shall we go for ladies first, Nikki?
Hi, Nikki. Are you unmuting yourself, Nikki?
Am.
Oh, you're there.
Hi.
Can hear you.
Is that Nikki that we know?
Yes, it's Nikki that you know.
Hello. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. I'm using a different audio thing, so tell me if you can hear me all right.
Yeah, fine. Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
It's okay.
Okay. Thank you for all of the beautiful words. They so make me smile. It's such a joy to try and talk about something. And I said, oh no, she's getting closer. Oh, she's getting closer. You know, I know that you know that I know that you know. It's just really beautiful. But what came up to share was this curious thing that's going on here. I had a bit of a bump on the head, and I got a concussion. And I have to go to this concussion clinic, and the name of the concussion clinic is Shift. So I know. So then I'm like, I have to go there, and then I don't know, I've never had a concussion before. It's all in the back of my head. And so they gave me exercises to do. So I thought I'd share just a few of the exercises and have your opinion on them. One of the exercises is called room narration. Ooh. So what you have to do is I have to look at something, like just look at that, like looking at the chair or whatever it is across the room. And then you have to expand your looking all the way around. And then as you're expanding them, you're supposed to label the things that you can see. So you can see like if there's a door, you can see if there's a closet, you can see that it's all the way, you know. Mm. And he said, because it's what it's like you've got the blinders on, because your vision is now focused. But I can't stop seeing from where the seeing is, and I can see, if I had to say, everything. Right? And this is like this handsome young man, and he's like, okay, now you're going to sit 6 feet apart because of, you know, what's going on. And then he goes, now, Nikki, what I want you to do is look into my eyes. And I was like, oh, fucking Nora, he's so handsome. The next job is look into my eyes. And I looked into his eyes, you know, for a bit, right? Like, nice. And I've got the mask on, thank goodness, right? Because it's like, oh. And then he says to me, okay, now, you see what you're doing? You're only looking into one of my eyes. I was like, really? He goes, yeah, that's what happens when you get a knock on the head. Like, you can't. Yeah, and I was like, oh, well, that's curious, right? It's just a curious thing that these are medical things about concussions. The other one is that you hear something like the secretary told me what time the appointment was, and the next appointment. I went to the elevator, pressed the buttons, went down, got to the car, forgot what time the appointment was, and I still had it. I still remembered it. I still knew I knew it, but I didn't know it. And he said, what happens is, because your neurons are stretched a little bit tighter, the message isn't getting through. So you only remember one message at a time. So when your mind went to think, oh, now you have to walk to the elevator and press the right button and then go to the car, your then brain went to that. So then it skipped the appointment time. So now I just take a little notebook. I'm like a little granny, right? And I'm like, notebook. Okay, what time? Oh, going to, go, eat my dinner this time, do my exercises this time. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you too. I hope I haven't taken up too much of the time, but it's such a curious thing about how people are telling us how to now fix, my brain damage. I told my daughter I had brain damage, and she goes, nothing new there then, Mum.
I love that. Oh, anyway. It reminds me of that movie. I can't remember. There was a Christian Bale movie where his memory had gone astray, and he had to keep tattooing things on his body, which would probably be a bit much just for a doctor's appointment, wouldn't it? Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating.
I just thought I'd share that because I don't know why, but it just, when you guys are talking, I was like looking at my own, I had to do my list thing. And it was like, it is just as you and we're talking.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. How am I going to try and unsee everything?
Yeah.
It's just this one thing going on.
Yeah.
Every week I'm going to have to stare into his eyes to better. Yeah, no, but anyway, it's a very curious thing. It's just something that's happening. It's not happening to me, but it's something that's happening, and it's there's all these like procedures and stuff to try and bring the person back to I don't know. I'm glad I'm talking about it on this because it's like it's just a curious thing, right?
Yeah.
I hope that
Wow, what a weird experience that must be. I think I might bang myself on the head so I can go and
No, none of that.
obviously
Please
just to
don't.
have that.
No, you're already bonkers, Anne. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I thought no one knew that.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's actually a very, very curious thing to be going through. Now there are headaches and all these other things that go with the emotions as well, so it can be a little bit, ooh, you know, but no, on the whole, the exercises are so funny. Yeah, hard work but funny. I don't know if I can actually do them. I'm going to try, but yeah. Anyway, let's get Michael on.
maybe Nikki, we know you should maybe you could stretch out, you know, maybe say you're having problems with the exercises, and then you'll get to go back more and more to see the doctor.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And I mean, in the story, the brain is a very complex thing, isn't it? In the world, everything is so complex. You know, you can just spin out on so many stories and stories and stories and stories, and stories are great fun. You know, I love stories.
Yeah.
But that's how this sort of, let's say, nothingness is constantly overlooked by that, really. And the brain's just like a machine, isn't it? I mean, parts go wrong, you know. It's almost like the separate self is a virus in the brain. It's like a little virus got in the brain, and that whoop, something's gone a bit whoop like that, and then suddenly it goes whoop back again. But also, what you mentioned there was that this, you know, this it doesn't seem to be looking through. There's no sort of nothing looking through the eyes anymore. It's sort of a more of a wider sort of scope. Oh, God, I don't know how to describe that.
It's so true. And I hear everything. It's so. And I asked him, right? I was saying, okay. He goes, do you have any more questions? You know, after I looked into his eyes, I'm like, I said, well, I do. I said, you know, what about my thinking? I can't really think, you know, like the thinking. And he's like, he's writing it down on his little pad too. And he's like, well, yes, he said. You know, because when in the brain, when a concussion happens, then this neuron sending messages to this neuron now has been, instead of being elasticy, it's been stretched, and it's really hard for this message in the stretchiness to get to that message, and it takes, you know, and he's trying to explain the no thinking. But it's called shift concussion. Now, come on, Anne,
Really
come
funny.
on.
Yeah.
That hilarious. I said to him, brilliant, Daron.
You should have really freaked him out and said, also, I've got this problem. Well, it's not really a problem, but nothing seems to be happening.
I know, but it's really tricky, right? Because he's in the mask, and it's all like, you know. Yeah. Oh no. Thanks, Daron.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Lovely, Nikki. And Michael's got a question.
Yeah, hang on. I think, Daron, there was someone, was it Randy before Michael? But the other person seems to have put their hand down.
Yeah, Michael has his hand up. But
yeah, someone else did, but they seem to have put their hand down. So, yeah.
Go ahead, Michael. Nice to see you. Hi.
Oh, nice.
Hi, Michael.
Hi. Nikki is so darn cute. I find it fascinating that she's aware that she's not thinking right. So her thinking can include the idea. Nikki, I just said you were so damn cute. I find it fascinating that her thinking is aware that it's not thinking right. So that kind of is amazing. My question is, there's a lot of talk on these sites about we don't exist and things aren't real, that everything's going on in our head. And what would you say to someone who is aware intellectually of that the sense of self is a mental fabrication, and the sense of separation is imaginary, and knowing that, and also at the same time going through the incredibly deep grief that comes with the loss of a beloved son? It's kind of a double whammy for them. They're told and they believe that nothing exists, and yet this dark cloud will not leave them. This years go by, and they still mourn the death of the son or daughter. So it's kind of a purgatory hell for them. Intellectually, they know that they don't exist, and yet this pain of loss haunts them. What would you say to them?
I think, you know, pain is, and I've had a lot of pain, emotionally and physically. So I've had a lot of that in the story of Anne. And it's always difficult if someone is feeling pain. There's no denying that or getting away from that. And there's no point in saying, well, you know, it's not real and you don't exist.
Mm.
There's no knowing that it's unreal. That you said that he knows that he doesn't exist. But there isn't a knowing of that. There really isn't a knowing of that. It's not a belief. There's no belief in it. It's not something that the mind knows. It's more energetic than anything else. When I speak to people who are suffering, the response is just a natural response of what happens. And compassion would happen normally if you know, if that's in your character to be compassionate. Usually if, you know, there's some you know, if someone's been through a lot of pain, they usually can speak of that. But I don't think non-duality applies to, you know, if someone is in a house that's burning, I'm not going to tell them that they don't exist or that nothing's happening or it's all empty. I'm going to go and get them a bucket of water to put the fire out. You know, so life continues exactly as normal. It's very, very ordinary. Life is normal. You know, people help each other. Human beings help each other. You know, just like animals have compassion and help each other and do things together. It's just like animals, you know, it's just the natural way. But I think it can be a burden to believe that nothing exists and to have that sort of non-dual belief almost. I think that can be psychological suffering, because then you always feel like you're not there. Oh, I don't exist, but I'm still feeling all this grief. And not wanting the grief to be there.
Yeah, I think I was just thinking, I mean, you would hope that the intellectual understanding of it might give them some comfort. And yet they may be still somehow frustrated. And if the grief is continuing, I mean, it's not necessarily to say that if it was understood not on an intellectual level, the grief could still perhaps go on for years and years. You know, that could happen. I would have assumed that it wouldn't go on and on, perhaps, but I'd probably talk to them and listen to what they had to say, and I feel empathic and I feel sad for them. And I might suggest that they saw somebody and talked about their grief, probably, with a therapist, a grief counsellor. Yeah, that sounds tough. Yeah, to be stuck in that pain for maybe years, not years and years, sometimes for people for the rest of their lives. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know a lot about grief of a death of a loved one and the grief that goes with it, but I have a very close friend who I don't want to mention her name because she might not want to speak of this, but she talks about it a lot, and she calls it living grief, and that how she now sees grief is very different than how she used to see it, and that now grief is love, that it's the same as love, and I think that's a very beautiful way to look at it. I think just to be that space for people. I know people that suffer, and sometimes no words are the best words. I think there's just that quietness, and that being is just the space for that to happen, so to speak, sometimes.
Can I say something, please?
Yes, Carol, please do.
Anne was referring to me, so I'll just brief on how it is for me, because I lost my husband 3 years ago last month, unexpectedly. He was and is the love of my life, my best friend, soulmate, and husband. He was a dad he didn't have to be, and that's part of the story. That's, and part of this apparent journey for me has been to come on this apparent path. And what I have learned through my seeking, my spiritual journey, whatever you wish to call it, is that, love and grief are the same thing, that it can coexist as one with the non-dual, everything being one. I'm not obsessive about my grief, but my husband's presence is still very much with us. Just because he died in the way we see it on earth doesn't mean he is gone. His love did not go, and our love did not stop when he passed away. It's still here, it's still around me. His energy, we have various little things at home that memory areas and various things that are quite personal. But there isn't a loss, but unless you come to those feelings, it feels like loss. For me, where I am now, I can't physically reach out and touch my husband as I could. It's that I miss. Although my husband had been unwell, it wasn't expected. In many ways, I have my husband back because I have that memory and that presence and that guidance, and I can hear the things that he said to me, and and I will have my chats with him. I see it from a very different place than the average person will see grief. And that's not something that you can get. It's been part of, there are no words to sum it up. It's been part of the process for me. I did have some bereavement counselling as well, because I got to a place of being stuck. I think it's just as Anne and Daron have said, it's about listening. about listening and allowing that person to find what works for them. Most people are pretty with me because of my attitude, my dignity, I've been told, as to how I've handled my husband's passing. And that doesn't mean to say in private that I haven't stabbed and screamed and everything else, because I have. I have screamed, it isn't fair. I have done all the things that people normally do. But because of this journey, it's just different. And it's like, as always said, it's unexplainable. The unexplainable. For me, everything has changed over the last few years, and nothing has changed. I can't tell you when or how, but I know for me, I've learned to, my husband's passing is real and unreal. It's that paradox again. I don't know if that's helpful. It's quite difficult to sum it all up in a few minutes, because this is Daron and Anne's time. But I hope that's been useful in some way or given you something to think on.
Thanks, Carol. Thanks, Michael. It's a good question. I mean, there used to be a lot of stress about, you know, maybe with my stepdaughter when she's going through a lot of trauma and things. Oh God, what do I do? You know, I've got to solve this. You know, I've got to do this and I've got to do that, and I need to say the right thing. But now there's none of that. There's really nothing to do. And everything seems to be done perfectly in that, more so than ever. You know, the words appear, the compassion appears, you know, it's even more amplified. The love is more amplified, you know, even in knowing that there's nothing need to be done and nothing happening and no one there, the love and compassion and the words still appear. Seemingly even better than when there was an appearance of a separate self who thought they knew what to do and what to say and was responsible to give this person something. There's a kind of knowing that there's really nothing to give anyone anymore. That I'm not responsible for anyone or for anything, that everything is really happening by itself. And it's just an amazing relief for that to be so. To know that everyone is completely okay, no matter what's happening. And to know that I've always been this, I've always been okay in all the horrendous pain and turbulence that seemed to be happening, all the heartbreak and the striving and the, oh God, all that story. There's just, it's like, oh my God, nothing was important, nothing was happening. Yeah. Thanks, Michael.
There's a question. Thanks, sorry, Daron. I was just a question here that I thought continued that I'll throw in now, if that's okay. Deep Void says, do relationships exist? Like mum, dad, sister, brother, husband, wife, daughter, son, etc., or is this all in the mind?
Yeah.
A good continuation on.
Mm-hmm. Do you want me to take that, Daron, or I'm happy to?
Well, the talking about relationships not really existing sort of implies that somehow there is less meaning to them, or somehow they're not important. A relationship, I feel, is a story. So it's your story of the relationship is the relationship, and the other person might have another story, and that's their idea of the relationship. An actual relationship isn't isn't really happening. Yeah, and that sounds awful, but it doesn't seem to make any difference, because I have a little 8-year-old boy, and when I look at my boy, he sat there, you know, doing his thing, playing on his computer, and I sort of glance at him like that, and I can see his long eyelashes, and he's so beautiful. And I look at him and I think, wow, there's nobody in there. It's just empty. And he's amazing. And so more, I would say in a way, more amazing. I mean, just so incredibly beautiful. So it sort of doesn't matter whether, you know, no, they're not real, but yes, they are.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yes and no. Absolutely real and wonderful and amazing, and they're so much fun. And they're not there as well. They're not real. They're always empty, and that's what creates the fun in them now. Relationships used to be so heavy, so like, oh God, you know. And that's what comes with the separate self, is this heaviness with everything, this burden of responsibility and doership, you know. And when the seeking ends, that you know, that ends, then, you know, there's a lightness, there's a playfulness, there's a childlikeness. I mean, something that seems, and it appears very new here, is me, the Anne character, adoring children. I mean, I've never had children. I've never had a maternal instinct in my body. I've always avoided them like the plague. And even with my stepdaughter and grandchildren, that I'm a bit scared, you know, a bit like, oh, I don't, you know, that's hard work sort of thing. Oh my God, now that's the best thing since sliced bread. They're just like angels in my eyes. And this is so new and so like, wow. And when I'm with my the 6-year-old and the 2.5-year-old, I don't know, there's just such an amplification of love. There's such a like,
Yeah.
I know there's no separation anytime, but it's like they are me and I am them. It's just, I am that child playing. I am that 2.5-year-old playing. I am that 6-year-old. I mean, they're just the best company ever. So it's a complete 100% turnaround in that. Yeah, and that is, you know, that's such a great joy to have that now.
Yeah.
And to care so deeply for them. Yeah.
That amplification that you mentioned, yes, it's like, yeah, it's like somehow magnified. So my train of thought just went completely, because I just got lost in what Anne was saying and thinking about my boy. So, but yeah, it's not, yeah, it's not that it was different before, but it does feel different. It sort of feels, I guess maybe when the looking for something to be different seems to be out of the way, it feels deeper somehow. And that makes it sound like that I didn't deeply love my child before. So that sounds awful. Because I did really love him. And I think perhaps in the same way, I don't know, I can't remember now. It's really hard to remember, but yeah, there seems to be a difference. Mm.
And it's the same with all feelings and sensations. It's full on feeling and sensation. There's no filter, you know. It's here, it's now, it's this, you know. Whether it be that lovely joyfulness with a child, or pain or sorrow, or, you know, grief, you know. But there's always a fascination in that. There's a fascination in the sensations and the feelings, almost like it's been felt for the first time. It's fresh and new. It's not that deadness. It's not that same old, same old. I mean, the story of my life, I became disenchanted with everything. It was like Groundhog Day. Another day of heaviness. You know, there was always that there in the background. But life's not like that. The life is alive and new and fresh in its ordinariness. It's not a blissed out state. It's not a state. It's just ordinary. It's just very ordinary. Where's Daron gone? Daron, where have you gone?
Okay, I'm still here. Don't worry, Anne.
The camera's gone off.
I'm just sticking a battery in my camera.
Yeah.
All I can see is 2 empty seats. Has everybody gone home? What time is it? Is everybody bored stiff?
No.
Is there any more questions, Carol?
Yeah, there is. It's 6:15, by the way, Anne.
Right.
It's right. So I'm just having a quick glance through here because some of them are similar. Oh, I've got a K.O. Watts who asks, was there any resonance with a particular talker, with a particular speaker?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess for me that seemed to change a lot over, well, what would it be, 4 years, 5 years? I think I just probably listened to just about everybody that I know of. So, and there would have been interest at points with somebody, or resonance with somebody who was speaking, and then that might just naturally somehow end, and then there would be resonance with something else, and it would move around. And sometimes I would go back to a speaker that I thought I'd tired of, maybe, or just moved away from. But I always felt like here that it felt like one voice. And I know that sounds a bit sort of woo-woo, but it just felt like one thing was speaking. And in a sense, it is, because what's speaking is coming from nowhere. So it just felt like different flavors and different ways of talking about this. And I've always just found that really interesting, listening to all of these different expressions of it. But I'm just trying to think. I love Tim Kliss. He's a friend, a good friend, and I really like him. But I love the way he talks at the moment. I might not in a few months, but I'll still like Tim.
We're gonna get dumped, Tim.
I know. No, I'll still love Tim. But so just the usual ones. Tim, Tony Parsons, I suppose. Yeah, the usual. Jim Newman, Tim. I'm just trying to think who else. Read all the books.
Dennis?
Been there, done it.
Yeah, I mean, same here. I blipped around all the time, and even as that was happening, it seemed very obvious even at the time, although they were still seeking there, that I wasn't doing that. You know, it was like I'd be watching one speaker and blip to another one, and it was like, how did that one get on? Or a new speaker would pop up and be like, where did they come from? You know, it's like the finger just did what it wanted on and these things appeared. You know, I went through a bit of like the guru thing with the Muji and stayed on the ashram for 3 months and did all that, and then that kind of fell through. Very, you know, and all the usual ones, Rupert Spira, Lisa Lennon, spent quite a lot of time with Lisa. Who else is the Daron?
Oh god, there are loads.
Yeah.
Lisa Cairns, she used to speak about this differently.
Yeah,
now.
Lisa
More
Cairns.
personal.
Tim, as
Kenneth
as
Madeline.
Daron mentioned, I listen to Tim now, and I love Tim. So, and I think I ended up with Jim and Tony. They were the sort of final frontier, but there is no final frontier.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And Michael, who's here at the moment, Michael Markham, and Nancy Nethercutt, who writes amazing poetry about this. It's incredible. You know, it's up there with, well, it's better than Rumi, I think, because Rumi can get a bit boring sometimes.
Yeah, I'd blip back and forth, but I think I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't want to really say a preference. I could, but I think it's who you resonate with, and you know, you sense it. You know, I try and make myself watch or listen to certain people sometimes, and that just didn't work. So it just seemed to go with the flow. You know, there was no shoulds or shouldn'ts in that. There was just going with the flow. Yeah. Any more questions? Anybody want to speak live?
I've got one on here, unless anyone wants to come online.
So you want to unmute and ask a question, or there's no silly questions, there's no silly shares. If you want to comment or share, it doesn't have to be a question. There are no answers anyway. I mean, literally, I don't have any answers at all. So
I literally
might seem like there are, but there aren't.
Yeah, I have no idea what we're talking about.
I've got a bit of a quirky smile for you here from Daron, from Ned Astrid 123 online, and he says, Daron, your outstanding camera resolution is distracting.
Oh yeah, isn't it amazing? Yeah,
I don't think you should use it again, Daron. I don't know.
I realized a little while back that I do street photography, and I realized a little while back my street camera can do video. It's like, wow.
And Emerson has replied to Ned and said, ha ha, I have camera envy. So so then there's another question here. It's a bit different, maybe, or not. BP4722 says, there is a powerful force moving in the body that slowly releases old traumas and also identification with concepts and the illusory self. Does this have to do with what you call non-duality?
Well,
you read it again, Carol.
Yes, certainly.
Yeah.
There is a powerful force moving in this body that slowly releases old traumas and also identification with concepts and the illusory self. Does this have to do with what you call non-duality?
Well, I would say that, you know, what this is just what's happening, and releasing old traumas or traumas coming up or tension in the body is what's happening. So non-duality itself isn't a something that can have something to do with it. But I would say that it does seem that the body can hold trauma. There seemed to be a winding down would be a story, but here there seemed to be a sort of quite a lot of tears at some point, and it was like a ringing out. It felt like a ringing out because the tears weren't for anything in particular. I could just feel them building up, and then they would just ring out, and it came to a point where it felt like I'd been wrung out completely. And a story about that would be that felt like it was held in the body somehow. Whatever that might have been.
Yeah, I think Daron's answered that. I don't really resonate. I don't resonate with any force running through the body that did something. Non-duality simply means, it's just a word. It just means not to, and I don't think it's a very good word for describing this, actually. Not to, I mean, why not thousands, or, you know, I mean, it's just so simple, you know. It's not that, in a way, that's another story, and everything's a story really, but it's a story of what's happening. And there only is what's happening, because you can call it whatever you like, you know. You can put any words to it. But the words don't matter. It's not really about the words. It's not about the descriptions or the labels or the words. We're talking about something else here that is indescribable, that is always. It's just always. It's, you know, it's not next or tomorrow. It's an indescribable this. It's the unknowing of everything. You know, it's unconditional love. There's nothing that's not allowed. Powerful forces in the body, or whatever we want to call this. They're just appearances of whatever happens, and anything can happen. And that's the beauty of it, that, you know, there's no exclusions. And so the normal way of a separate self going about its day, it's like, oh, should I be doing this or that? Or I don't think that's right. Should I do that? Or I'm going to do this. And that whole commentary, that whole story is irrelevant, really. It's just like the birds chirping or clouds passing by. It's just what happens. It doesn't mean anything. Thoughts don't have any purpose. They don't mean anything. It's just the mind separates things and puts them in good and bad categories and compares. This is better than that. That's better than that. But if all that's removed, if there was no reference to dipping into the mind to find out what anything is, then what would anything be? That's how simple it is.
Yeah. It's like Tim was saying earlier, you know, it's completely there and it's completely not there. And it's really easy to move off and talk about, you know, have discussions and chats and go down little alleyways. But really, we're just talking about something that doesn't exist. And yet it seems that when seeking stops, it becomes obvious that which doesn't exist feels like it does, but it doesn't. Yeah, and that's I guess that's a relaxation.
Yeah. It's like there's just it's like hypnotism. It's like being hypnotized by all the happenings, you know, and the maze of the stories and the fascination in, you know, where everything's going and what does that mean and what's the meaning of life. But they're all just pretty stories. There's nothing right or wrong with them, but they're just like slaps of colour on a painting, you know. It's only when there's a me there to take them as real and important, and that they're going to lead me somewhere. They're going to give me something that'll make me whole, that'll make me feel that fulfillment that I want, that love that I want. This is complete love. This is completely intimate. It's a complete embrace. You know, I'm sure you know who says, the beloved is always with you. So there's no need to mention names, but that was one of my favourite, you know, because that's how it feels, and it's not a feeling, but, you know, and the whole, if I had to put in story, it felt like a seduction of life. It felt like being taken into life's arms and literally seduced to just nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. Just this love, just this complete and utter wholeness of love. And that doesn't mean to say that anybody's walking around loved up all day. It's just that intimacy of everything. Yeah, that's it.
Are there any? That was lovely, Anne. I nearly just jumped in. Was there any more questions? So, all right, Anne, that's great, lovely. So lovely. So lovely.
I mean, we think we're coming to an end now. I mean, we've got one rigid now, so.
I was feeling that a bit too, but I just wondered if there are any questions that perhaps, you know.
Burning questions.
Exactly.
We haven't had any of them. I think everybody's gone home down Zurian. Shall we carry on chatting?
Well,
you mean Carol now? It's just us three, you know. Okay,
You-
everyone. Well, thank you so much for coming. You know, it's been
just before we go, Anne, Carol was just going to say something. Was there something?
Sorry.
Yeah. I was just going to say you're 43 on YouTube at the moment. You were up to over 50 at one time. So,
Oh, lovely.
and you were 17, 18 on Zoom. So
Okay.
you've had
So-
plenty of people listening to you who've enjoyed it.
If there's
And there's
any,
no one listening, and there's no one been saying anything. That's
Oh.
the beauty of this.
Yeah.
And you're throwing it back at me now, Anne, aren't you?
yeah.
For me teasing you earlier.
Yeah. Well, thanks
Oh,
everybody.
it's
It's been really
Thank-
good fun. Yeah.
See you later. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Thanks,
We're
Anne.
one again next month.
Thanks,
First
folks. That was
Thursday.
great.
Thanks, Denise.
Thank you.
Bye.
It was lovely.
Thanks, Walter.
You make a good pair.
Oh, thanks, Michael, Nikki, we know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for all your shares. Everyone shared and asked questions. It's really nice to hear everyone's points of view on this.
Yeah.
Bye.
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 Bye.